Are you having any issue with the state with like your currency, or like they trying to say it's a stock or anything like that? Or?
So the main concern is whether these blockchain tokens are investment instruments. But yeah, my company is at the frontier of technology, and when you're at the frontier of technology, it very commonly happens regulations aren't set up to deal with you. So we've spent more than $600,000 in legal fees basically to get a bunch of question marks back as answers. And the way business works in the United States is you spend years of your life, you and dozens of other people, you spend millions of dollars, and then one day you're told what you're doing was okay or not. And it's certainly one of the things that's made me dislike the government, more than any other personal experience, for sure.
And so you're mostly getting sued by the state?
It's not getting sued. It's trying to get you. There's very little ability to get proactive clarity, right? We could write up a document that spells out exactly what we're trying to do. Is this okay or not? There's no way to do that. The only way so you ask a lawyer, and the lawyer interprets the statutes, and the lawyer says, well, is this legal or not? But when you're doing something that's so new that there's no court history as to how the statutes are going to be interpreted in this case, the answer ends up being, well, they say it's probably okay, but we'll find out one day. And so that's what you do. You go and build. You spend years and years of your life building this thing, and then one day you'll just be told, yeah, that was okay, or no, it wasn't.
If it's not okay, would they just shut you down? They're going to put you in prison? They're going to sue you, all three?
One of my early questions with the lawyers was like, would it be civil or would it be criminal? I've received very strong assurances that like it would just be civil issues, but they could get shut down. I mean, I could look at it. There's a really cool company in New York. I forget the name of it. But what they did was they took the broadcast antennas in New York. They would buy you an antenna, your own antenna, right? So they owned one just for you. And they would replay that. This is perfectly legal. Courts have said this is perfectly legal. So if I own an antenna in New York City, I can take the signal of that and watch it in Houston, Texas.
Oh, you say just
capture it, send it over the internet, I can watch it in Houston, Texas. Court said this is perfectly legal. So a company said, okay, we'll do this for people. Anyone who signs up for our service, we will buy them an individual antenna. We're not going to pull antennas, we're not going to share antenna. Every customer of our service has one antenna, it's only their antenna, and then we'll stream it for them over the internet, as courts have said is legal for a person to do. Had to go all the way to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court says, well, to people on the outside buying your service, it feels like you're a cable company. What you're doing isn't a cable company, but people think it is. Therefore, you're regulated by the laws of cable companies, and you're breaking the law. Right? And this is one example of dozens where companies just, tens of millions of dollars spent on that company, building it up, growing it. They had tons of customers. Dead overnight. Domain just goes down.
Did anybody go to prison or anything like that?
No one went to prison in that case.
They probably had to pay out the nose, probably. They had probably to pay through the nose.
Yeah. I will say with corporate protections in the U.S., it generally doesn't reach you personally. I don't think they suffered personally, but they spent an incredible amount of their time, building this thing that people wanted to use, and the government kills it. One bright side of what I'm doing with LBRY, LBRY, is at least that, the design is such that it should keep going without us. It's all open source software, it's all decentralized. So that does make me feel a little bit better about it. But yeah, it's one of the most unpleasant parts of this job, for sure.
So back to that case and in general cases. Yeah. What happens is these politicians they call them donors, but they're investors. They get into office and then they manipulate the market for the people that invested in their entity, their power surge, right? Yeah. Do you think that has a lot to do with that case in New York, and does that have a lot to do with what you're dealing with?
Well, this is entirely judicial, and even what we face will be entirely judicial. Well, no, Congress could pass new laws around blockchain assets, and that's definitely a fear. But for the most part, the struggle is just even how do existing laws, which are already on the books, how are they interpreted? You can't get proactive judgment, so it's just this is just the way it works.
So you're just dealing with a lot of incompetence too, as well, probably.
My lawyers say I shouldn't make derogatory comments about specifics because they're retaliatory, but I can't. That's the other crazy part about it. I will say this. I've been in the highest level of negotiations with government officials that I've ever been in my entire life. So I've really been seeing how the sausage gets made, and I've never been that kind of person who's like the government is the mafia. But this is the most it's ever felt like. You talk to a government organization, they specifically say, let's have this conversation over the phone so there's not a record of it. And they use language that's like literally similar to it would be a shame if we had, it would be a shame.
Really?
yes, they will threaten you with just additional subpoenas, additional actions, purely because they know it hurts the company. And they will never explicitly say that, but they'll sure as hell say it implicitly.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. So what's your take from that? What's your takeaway?
I mean, my strongest...
I mean, so, not to cut you off, and I want to hear this, but it seems like also, that would be so frustrating.
Yeah, and this is, I guess, another, I do differ from some other libertarians. Despite suffering all this, I don't think the people doing this were evil. I don't. I think they, for the most part, some of them are maybe a little cynical, a little opportunistic, but everyone is responding to their local incentives, and a lot of them think they're doing the right thing. Most of them think they're doing the right thing.
Interesting.
My attitude is that the world is the way that it is because people are about 80% good, 20% bad in responding to local incentives, right? I think most people are mostly good.
Yeah.
And so why do we get the outcomes that we do? It's because they're responding to the incentives that they face, right? They're not being cynically evil. They're responding to the incentives.
I would tend to agree with you.